Hi, everyone. I'm just going to give a couple minutes for everyone to join today's session. So I'm going to continue on now. So welcome everyone to our second and final Nurse Digest session of 2025. So I'm Alicia and I am the project officer of our Digital Health Nurse Transformers project. I'm joined along with my program manager, Cressida. So we're excited to all have you on board today, along with some experts from the Digital Health Agency, and you may see some familiar faces on the panel. So today, Dr. Kathy Rainbird will be moderating the digital health session and panel today, and she'll be joined by Karen Booth, so the Chief Clinical Advisor specific to nursing, Chris Boyd-Skinner, Director of Clinical Governance, and Tim Plunkett, Director of Clinical Safety and Incident Management. Before I hand over to Kathy, APNA and the Digital Health Agency would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea, and community. We pay our respects to elders past, present, and emerging, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples joining us today. So before I hand over, I'm just going to do a bit of housekeeping. So you would have noticed that everyone is on mute today. The presentation will be recorded, and by attending that session, you agree to that recording. The slides and the recording will be made available to you after today's session as well. So any detail and links that will be shared today will also be able to be accessed by you. During the presentation, our presenters will give you an opportunity to ask questions, comments, any insights. So feel free to put any of those responses in either the chat box or the Q&A function, and one of the team members will be able to answer those or get back to you as well. I'm going to pass over to Kathy and stop sharing my screen.
Thank you so much, Alicia, and really great to be here joining for this session today. We're really excited to be presenting this session to all of you. So to kick off, we thought we would just jump into a panel discussion, and to do that, I thought it would be good for each of our panel members to just give a little bit of context and background and the reason why they're here presenting today. Some of you, I'm sure, already know Karen, and she needs a little introduction, but I'll throw to Karen first to just give a little bit of background about your journey to here. In 2 minutes, Karen.
Oh,
Don't forget to unmute.
That's great. Hello, everyone. It's very lovely to be with you with my new hat on, and I'm the immediate past president of APNA, and still on the board of APNA until I stand down in June next year. And I've had the great fortune and pleasure to be the clinical advisor at the Digital Health Agency for nursing for the last 12 months. And the main part of my role is actually a clinical governance role. So participating in activities and looking at products that we're developing at the agency with that clinical governance lens, and being able to advise and hopefully support the program teams in the development of some amazing new work that they're doing. And as I said, with that clinical governance perspective. Thanks, Kathy.
Thanks, Karen. And Chris, if I might throw to you next, who is joining us from the heat of Darwin. Chris, could you give us a little bit of your background and why you're here today?
Yeah, happy to, Kathy. Thanks very much. And also just wanted to acknowledge that I'm on country today, the land of the Larrakia people up here in Darwin. So also pay my respects to elders past and present. So I'm a registered nurse by background. I started my clinical life in intensive care many moons ago in neuro and trauma, but I've also worked in community healthcare in the UK and as a retrieval nurse here in Australia and also internationally. And I'm still working clinically from time to time when I can find a moment to do so. But for about the last 10 years or so, I have been working in Commonwealth government in the digital patient safety space. And most of that work has really involved looking at how we make digital technology safe and also, I think importantly, meet the needs of clinicians and consumers. So At the agency, my role is all about clinical governance. So thinking about those all-important systems and processes that we need to put in place to make our national digital health products fit for purpose, make sure they're safe, and also that they're working as best as they can for clinicians and consumers. And I think coming into this role after working clinically for such a long time has been really helpful, because to have that nursing background, it also helps me not to lose sight of some of those key issues and challenges that we face as a clinical discipline. So thanks for having me on the call today.
Thanks, Chris. Excellent. And Tim Plunkett, would you like to introduce yourself and give a little background, please?
Yeah, I'd love to. So firstly, thanks for having me. Thanks for making time, everyone, in dialing into this. So I'm Tim Plunkett. And for my journey, I actually started, my mum and my sister are both nurses. And that's what got me into healthcare. I went down the pharmacy path. And that certainly was guided by that shared interest in looking after the health of people in the community. So what I found in my experience working as a pharmacist is the importance of patient safety, particularly at the time around medicine safety. And it was also the feeling of working with all these different systems and feeling like there's got to be a better way. And then that's what led to my interest in digital health, to see how we could improve things from a safety and also a workflow perspective. And eventually led me to joining the agency. And I've been with the agency for around the last 9 years, working in the clinical safety area. And applying those skills that I learned as a healthcare provider in the context of digital health, for me, has been one of the things that I feel I've taken away, and I've been able to try and make change from a patient safety perspective at scale. I guess one of the things that has brought me to this discussion today has been that desire to try and improve our workforce capability when it comes to digital health tools and when it comes to improving the safe use of those tools. And one of those, programs of work has been the clinical safety training course that the agency has partnered with the Australian Institute of Digital Health. And it's been a really great combination of the clinical governance area, working with the education team to develop and enhance a education module that we hope will, and that we're going to touch on today, will hope improve the understanding and application of clinical safety in digital health.
Thanks, Tim. So to kick off our panel discussion, which is all about clinical safety in digital health, I guess taking that sort of a little bit of a step back and throwing it to the panel in terms of what do we really mean when we talk about digital health? We all talk about it quite a lot because we're in the Digital Health Agency, but what do we actually mean when we talk about that? So Karen, I might throw that question to you first. What do you mean? What do you mean when we think of digital health?
Well, I think when we talk about digital health, people just automatically think it's something that you do with computers, and maybe that is true. But there are lots of areas where we use digital health now, and use an ECG machine that then gives you a readout of what the person's rhythm is and if there's some concerns there. And always trust your knowledge, your clinical knowledge on that one. But, that's just a simple example that you use every day, and people don't think, oh, is that a digital health tool? And then when we do look at moving, we've got most general practice has been computerised for the last 25 years, and we use things like health assessments and screening tools, and then look at collating information from that. So all of that is part of it. And I think the biggest move, of course, has been telehealth. Over COVID, when people couldn't get to see the GP, I couldn't get in to see their regular healthcare professionals, we moved to kind of telephone version, and then, of course, video version of telehealth, which is some of the main areas that we use at the moment.
Excellent. And Chris, what's your definition of digital health?
Yeah, so look, I tend to think about digital health in the context of safety and quality, because I have spent quite a long time working in that digital patient safety and that clinical governance space. So to me, digital health, like Karen said, is not just about computers or digitizing records. It's really more so about embedding safety and quality into the fabric of care delivery. And if we look at things like enabling real-time access to accurate data as a clinical discipline, we can inevitably make much better decisions about the care that we provide to our patients based on that current information. So the benefit of that is we get things like reduced duplication. We have the opportunity to prevent errors more effectively in things like medication mismanagement or missed test results. So I think it really supports that evidence-based practice by integrating things like clinical decision support tools, alerts and guidelines directly into our workflows. And in that way, we sort of have this more consistent, secure, and most importantly, more clinically meaningful approach by leveraging all the wonderful digital health technologies that we have available to us. So I guess in short, it transforms safety from that reactive process into a more proactive type approach to care. And we really do benefit, and our patients benefit from that system-wide capability to get a better experience through utilising different types of technology.
Fantastic. Thanks, Chris. I like that definition. Tim, now the pressure's on for you to come up with a better one.
Look, I think from a definition perspective, for me, it's really about like health and care involving elements of technology to manage health information. But a bit what Karen and Chris has touched on, it's more than just that. For me, it's an enabler for healthcare change for both patients and healthcare providers that ultimately that we want to lead to better health and care outcomes. So, I mean, we've seen with the My Health Record and even software vendors out there as separately giving consumers access to the health information as part of their healthcare journey. So consumers today can get their pathology results as soon as they're uploaded, and I think that's been a great achievement. And that's delivering benefits for the consumer and changing the way that we're giving them access to their health information as well, and better control over their health and care outcomes. So you might think about it as a nurse when you give immunisations in the community, they're now uploaded to that person's record. And I mean, when I've had that done in community, I now get a notification on my phone saying it's in my record, it's there. And I think some of those changes we're going to see benefits from both that care continuity perspective to make sure that information makes its way through the different healthcare parts of the system, but also it enables that consumer to be able to have that sort of kept safely somewhere so they can keep track of all their information and see if they're up to date with what they need. So with healthcare providers as well, we've seen technology that when it was introduced, it might have made doctors' handwriting a little bit more legible than what it was. It moved into decision support, and that's helping with alerts, preventing allergies and things like that. But then we've got AI on the horizon, and that we might see changes to the way that we operate and work every day. For me, working at the agency at a macro level, stepping up above all this, it's about enabling consumers to take control of their health. And a bit like telehealth, it's enabling those new models of care to emerge. And also, I think it's an enabler for us as healthcare providers to operate within our full scope of practice and capability. So as we allow that information to be connected, we're allowing ourselves to operate in that care team for that person and to be able to do things that can be communicated and better coordinated as part of their care. So that for me is kind of the definition and what it all means.
Excellent. Thanks, Tim. And I really like that point that you made about being part of the care team, because I think that's what digital health can really do. It ensures everyone is part of that care team, because if we all have access to that key health information through those digital health tools, it means that all healthcare providers and the individual themselves are part of that care team and can help ensure the better outcomes for everyone. So Karen, given that we talked about what digital health is, I guess the next question is, how does all of this apply within the sort of nursing context?
Sure. Well, I think there are great efficiencies to be had, certainly using digital health. We can pull information together so much more quickly. And I think the communication pathways that we have through digital health will certainly help to streamline a lot of the care activity that we do. Particularly now that we're putting much greater focus on multidisciplinary care. So that care planning component with multiple team members, I think, can only happen from a digital platform. And we do it sort of a bit piecemeal with correspondence to each other, hopefully secure messaging. But certainly the My Health record at the moment as a national health record is going to play a major role as a conduit in that information sharing. I think so. Some of the technologies that we've touched upon are important, and AI will play a role in that. But I think from what's happening in the nursing world at the moment is we have a new national nursing strategy. It will be our first national nursing strategy, and we have really had the agency and we've had some good input into defining some of the competencies that will be part of that strategy. So we went from not having any strategy and then only having one line about where digital health will apply to actually now having a large component focusing on the national nursing strategy for that will utilise digital health and the need for health professionals to be digital literate. And that varies, as we know, from across professions and across different sort of levels of health worker. So making sure that we have a well-educated workforce that will be able to use those tools of the future. And the other things that are happening at the moment that are out for consultation are both the enrolled nurse standards and the practice nurse standards. And the agency, we've had quite heavy input into both of those standards reviews to make sure that digital health is included in that, so that we're looking at digital health in undergraduate studies as well as postgraduate studies. So in academia as well as in practical terms, there is a lot happening in that nursing space. Thanks, Kathy.
Thanks, Karen. So, Tim, I guess to think about all of this in terms of context for this webinar, why do we need to think about clinical safety when we're talking about digital health?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think for the way I would think about it is that clinical safety in health has been an imperative. So it's always been something that we try and do as health and care providers for our patients to make sure that they're safe, right, and that we're giving quality care. And in my experience, nurses have been the strongest advocates for patient safety and are truly the last line of defence in many cases. And just reflecting on this, those key concepts don't change when it comes to digital health. Digital health brings new opportunities to make things safer, to bring better quality care. And that can come with technology, the better sharing of information. But one of the things that we need to think about as we introduce those changes is that we're managing that change. And we're also making sure that it goes to plan, that it delivers those intended benefits without introducing new risks. So when I think about, I guess, the use of digital tools in practice, and if I could make one point today, it would be that as you're using those tools in practice, I've always found nurses have a really good sixth sense when things aren't quite right. And then when it comes to those digital systems, if you're feeling that sense that something isn't quite right, what you might normally do with paper is manage it there, contact the prescriber or someone else and make sure that any errors get corrected. When it comes to digital, what's important is that that we think about whether those errors could be from the data or from the systems that actually are presenting that data, or from systems that come upstream in the sharing landscape. And I think that's the change here, and that the way we think about things is the same, but then the way that we might think about managing it is slightly different because it involves those systems as well. So if there's one key takeaway, it's just being able to if you sense something isn't quite right, and it could be related to the system or the data upstream, to let those parties know that are upstream, or the software companies, so they can look into it and make sure that that system is working as safely as possible. And that's probably some of the I guess the key takeaway that I think is important when it comes to safety with digital health.
Excellent, thank you. So Chris, question for you, and I'm just conscious of our time, and I want to open up the floor for questions from the audience as well. But Chris, just in terms of clinical governance, would you like to comment on how clinical governance can support clinical safety in digital health, and how it relates in terms of policy development and the implications for primary healthcare nurses?
Yeah, sure. Happy to, Kathy. That's a great question. And I think for me, clinical governance really is that backbone for safe care. And that's regardless of whether it's seeing a patient in a clinic face-to-face or whether it's via a digital tool. The application, from my perspective, is exactly the same. It's really about, as Tim said, embedding those safety principles at every stage of technology use. So whether it's design, procurement, implementation, and also the ongoing use and monitoring of the use of that technology in a practice. Clinical governance provides that assurance layer to make sure that the technology is being used safely. And look, admittedly, the concept sometimes causes a little bit of confusion, but at the end of the day, it's really the stuff that we do day in, day out as nurses when we provide high quality care. So it's that person-centered aspect. It's knowing and understanding what our roles and responsibilities are, when to escalate care, and also doing things safely in the context of those policies and systems that we have well established in our practices or clinics. I think from a policy perspective, clinical governance ensures that digital tools align with certain clinical standards and also regulatory requirements. But for me, it's not just about that compliance piece. It's also about creating systems that genuinely support us as clinicians and protect patients when we're using technology. And Karen mentioned telehealth, and I think that's a really good example of where clinical governance approaches can improve the experience for our patients, because if we've got processes in place for things like consent, identification, privacy, technical processes for service continuity and escalation of care if someone deteriorates, that really, in essence, is clinical governance in action. So I think fundamentally for me, it's important to understand that clinical governance isn't just this static thing that you sort of set and forget. It's that driving continuous improvement, monitoring risks, learning from our mistakes and incidents, and also adapting our policies at a local level as technology evolves. And I think, Tim pointed to artificial intelligence. That's something that we're going to need to be really cognizant of as technology gets much more embedded and much more sophisticated.
Can I just briefly build on what Chris said? All of those principles of clinical governance we apply in day-to-day work. So we know if you're talking about infection control, all of the processes for that, and it's about patient safety, your risk management, team safety, quality and access, and also medico-legal protection. And you should have, particularly for things like AI use, to check if you do have policies in your practice around the use of that technology. But those same clinical principles apply from what you do day-to-day hands-on care to the same when you're using digital health and digital products. Thanks.
Thanks, Karen. And I guess to wrap up the discussion, I think part of the key thing is that digital health is fundamentally changing how we're providing healthcare, especially with AI, as the panel have alluded to. And I think in terms of balancing that great benefit that digital health can bring in terms of efficiencies, improved quality, improved safety, improving that flow of information, involvement of everyone in care, and balancing the risks of what's involved in using those technologies and being aware of what those risks could be. And I guess that's where partly why we're having this discussion, where the new course that we've developed, which is all about clinical safety in digital health, we have an e-learning course, comes into play, because that can give you some information about how to think about identifying those risks and weighing up the risks versus benefits, and how you as nurses can play a role in that space, both in terms of the clinical governance, but also in terms of on the ground. So I might jump into my presentation quickly if I can share my screen and present my slides. Just bear with me for a second while I do that. And hopefully you can all see my slides now, and I'll just hide that. So just to quickly give a bit of a background around why we're here and why we're talking about this, as I said, digital health transformation is here. I mean, I'm sure we all remember the old paper filing systems that sometimes people used to use in general practice and in medical practices. Now the computers are replacing the paper records, and getting rid of that scratchy doctor's handwriting is probably a benefit for all of us, in terms of not just those medical records, but also electronic prescriptions, but also those other things that are coming or currently already being used in terms of those decision support prompts that we get in our clinical software systems. Wearable devices that patients might be using that can support tracking of their care and tracking of their health. Virtual care, telehealth, as Karen mentioned, and then, as we've all been talking about and touching on, the use of AI, which is coming thick and fast. So while it's all there to support and deliver better health and care, we do need to be mindful of clinical safety throughout that whole journey. So building the clinical safety digital health capability of the clinical workforce is really important. So one of the things that we've done is to focus on raising awareness of clinical safety in digital health, and working under what we have as a plan called the National Digital Health Capability Action Plan. We have been working with the Australasian Institute of Digital Health to develop a course to ensure that we have subject matter expertise input to ensure that we can strengthen that understanding of why we need to be cognizant of clinical safety throughout the whole process. So I am pleased to say that we have launched the introductory course. It was launched at the HIC conference in August 2025, and we've actually already had over 400 people complete the course. So on this slide, it's a little bit out of date in terms of the number of enrolments. I think we've actually clicked past over 800 enrolments in the course now. And if you scan that QR code, it will take you to our training platform. It's a free online access. You just need to register for an account and then you're set up to use it. The other thing that we're doing at the moment is working with the Institute to collaborate further to develop what's called our intermediate clinical safety course. So again, we're having that engagement with key stakeholders and subject matter experts to develop that course. So that's coming and hopefully will be launched in 2026. Watch this space. So just a little bit about the introductory course. It is interactive and scenario-based. It's got some great little videos in there which introduce key concepts and definitions. It's designed for a broad audience. So it's not just for people who are making digital health systems, but people who work in healthcare and across different sectors. It takes about an hour and a half to complete, but it does also give you CPD cheer points. Plus you can also track it for your own CPD. And as I mentioned, we had many stakeholders involved in that development and design of the course, and a pilot that was undertaken which showed that it was effective in improving people's confidence and understanding of clinical safety. The intermediate course will, of course, build on that introductory course, and it looks at the clinical safety aspects throughout the whole of a digital health sort of life cycle, if you like. So from the initial discovery and inception of a digital health product, so thinking about what do we need to be sharing, what sort of information do we want to be transmitting or using to support better care for people, and how's the best way to do this, through to the design, the development, testing, and then implementation, and then actually using it in practice and decommissioning. And I think nurses have a really important part to play in all parts of that journey, not just in the operations and use of a system, but throughout that whole discovery, and having the ability to say, hold on, this isn't going to work from a clinical perspective because of this particular issue. So watch this space for that course coming soon. So that's just taking you back to that link. I'll jump out of my slides now and go back to see if we have any questions.
Yes, Kathy, I would just add for the APNA, for the nurses, that you can also enter this through the Florence app, and that will help with building your CPD profile. There's also the Nursing Digital Capability Framework that's we developed, and it is based on the Career and Education Framework for APNA. So all the imagery for the pieces of pie where you build your career from foundations, intermediate to advanced, it's built on those same principles. And as I said, it's got step-by-step competencies in there where you can go, yeah, oh, I'll do that, I'll do that. Oh, I might need to, bone up on that particular area. So definitely worth looking at as well.
And great that you mentioned the Florence app. I've seen that app in action. It looks fantastic. So yes, if you can find it in there, please do it that way. And if you enjoy the course, give it a thumbs up in the app so that others jump in and do it that way as well. That'd be great. So Alicia, I was just having a little look in the chat. I've seen that a few people have had to jump off because they're on their lunch break, and apologies, we're going a little bit over time, but I think Alicia and the team were happy for us to go a bit over if needed. But I did see one question which relates to how we can safely and securely store data collections when we're using different platforms. So for instance, using best practice in a general practice or an ARCHO, and then in health support services using EMRs. Tim, do you want to have a quick response to that one, or am I putting you on the spot there? I guess my initial thought is making sure that individually we are cyber aware of cyber security and thinking about that. And if you haven't seen, we do have some really great security and awareness courses in that same space where you'll find the link to the module on our online portal. There's a digital health safety and security awareness course. So in terms of as an individual, how you can safely use those systems. But Tim, did you want to comment further?
Yeah, I mean, look, it is critical that we protect patient data, not only from confidentiality breaches, but make sure that the integrity and the accuracy is there. And that I think this comes down to a number of different elements, and that could be ones that is done by the software providers to embed technical controls that are compliant to cybersecurity standards, and making sure that those standards are in place. But as well, I think a lot of this depends on culture and people as well. So we know from cyber breaches and risks that it can be the humans that contribute to those data leakages or someone getting access to the system that shouldn't. So I think from a person-centered perspective, it is important that we do have policies in place to make sure that we are working with that data safely, and there's different data governance frameworks that you can look at to try and find the best ways to do that. But in the end, it is that combination of people, process, and the systems that go about making sure that that data is safe. When we're talking about cross-platforms as well, I think there's unique considerations for that, that hopefully we've got interoperable platforms that allow that data to be shared securely. And then if not, that does create a barrier to being able to do things securely. So I think that sort of reflects one of our goals for interoperability, is to make sure that we can share that data for what we need when we need it safely and securely. So I hope that helps answer.
There is a separate question which relates to My Medicare and duplicate numbers, but I think we might have to take that question on notice and take it offline. It's probably not directly related to this discussion, although it does, I guess, relate to issues of duplicate data issues, but I'll find out a phone number, contact number for that person and send that through to Alicia to pass on so that they can respond to that. I can't see any other clinical safety questions popping up in the chat or in the Q&A. If anyone has any questions, please type them in.
Thanks, Kathy, as well. I have a question in regards to the safety module. Would it be a requirement for the health professional to do the introductory course first before completing the intermediate, or is it kind of self-enrolled and you can choose if you want to?
It makes a lot of sense to do the introductory one first, and the intermediate one is still being developed, so it's not available yet anyway. But it really gives, I guess, that introduction and that foundational understanding, and the intermediate course will build on that. So there may be a little bit of sort of reflection back about what was introduced in the introductory module. But yeah, it's definitely worth doing that introductory one first.
Perfect.
I might just add, having done the module myself, and I thought, oh, I know a lot about clinical governance, but there was actually quite a bit of new information in there that I found really helpful. And I think one of the things it does do, the scenarios, you can relate that scenario to whether the scenario might look like it's in a hospital, but the principles will apply to what you do in primary care, and you relate that to maybe an encounter that you've had. So that's actually quite a good learning process. But I think what it does do, it will help you ask better questions about what's happening in your workplace and how you should maybe make sure that you've got policies set up, or guidance set up for people who are using technology, particularly with the scribes that are being introduced. Some you need to know, do they comply with privacy principles? Is the patient data stored in the practice? Does it go off-site? If off-site, does it go overseas? Where is it stored? A whole pile of questions, and patient consent. So I think doing the modules will help kind of alert you to some of those needs that you can then look at developing policies for your workplace.
Thanks, Karen. I guess I might just throw it back to the panel for one final wrap up in terms of a key message. Perhaps, Chris, if I could go to you first, putting you on the spot.
Yeah, thanks, Kathy. And again, thanks for the opportunity to speak today. I think it really does demonstrate that nurses, are here to play a leading role in the delivery of technologies. And I think fundamentally, whether we like it or not, digital health is going to be reshaping our profession quite significantly. But with that strong governance focus and clear policies that Karen talks about previously, and also with nursing workflows in mind, I think we've got a really wonderful opportunity to be able to use technologies and harness them without the potential to compromise care, and that's really our responsibility, and it's also an opportunity that's before us.
Great, thanks, Chris. Tim, any final messages from you?
Yeah, look, I think Chris said it pretty well, but for me, and this is something that Chris has reflected on before, but it's all about trust, right? So while we're here, and making sure that we are doing things for, to achieve the best patient outcomes, and digital can play a key role in that. I think, as Chris said, it is something that is going to become more embedded into our everyday, and as healthcare providers, we have an opportunity to work with those tools, to embrace it, and to even work to improve both the systems and the outcomes if we take that opportunity and work towards that goal.
Excellent. And Karen, last word goes to you.
Look, we talk about digital technology at the moment as a new thing, but in 5 years' time, it'll be business as usual. So we just need to make sure that we're learning well along the way, that we're safe. The people we care for trust us that we are safe and that we know what we're doing. So it's really helpful to make sure that, we are across the new technology that will be the everyday technology tomorrow. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you all panel members. You've been fantastic. It's been a great discussion. And Alicia, I'll throw it back to you. I haven't seen any more questions coming in the chat, but thank you all very much.
Thank you so much, Kathy, for moderating. We did schedule this webinar till 1:15, so if there is any last minute questions from anyone attending, please use the experts in the room. I've just launched in the meantime an evaluation if you do have time before going back to your lunch breaks to fill that one out. That would be amazing for both the agency and APNA to know. And yeah, I just also want to really thank Karen, Tim, and Chris for your expertise and knowledge for today's session. I haven't had any. Ooh, I've got a hand up, so I think that was Lisa. If I can give you access to talk, if you want to come off mute and ask the question to the panel. It may have also been an accident, so you don't have to, Lisa, if you don't want to. Perfect. We're getting a lot of thank yous, so thank you so much. I'm going to end the session in the next 30 seconds. If anyone has any burning questions, you've got till then. And if you haven't filled out that evaluation form, we really do appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your days.
Thank you so much, everyone. Take care. Have a good day.